I've been asked a question about what makes a long casting setup. So I was going to try and keep it as short as I can and explain where I'm coming from. The first thing you need to know is the sinker itself, it needs to be aerodynamic. That's what's leading everything forward. Not only does it need to be aerodynamic, the bait needs to be about half the weight of the sinker. If your bait is heavier than the sinker, you'll never get distance out of it. You'll always be pushed short. Now, one of the keys that we live by is it's better to put a small bit of bait where the fish are than a big bit where they're not. So that's one rule. So we're going to work up the rod in a second. I wanted to show you some that's a tournament sinker aerodynamic. Now this is one that someone's copied, and you'll often see sinkers with long shafts. People have the wrong concept that this long shaft increased distance. It doesn't. What it does, it decreases distance. This sinker, when you cast a small one, turns rapidly and becomes aerodynamic. The long tail sinker will stay sideways longer and reduce the distance you can cast. That's another point. When you're throwing big lures as well, you need to keep the drop really short. Dave Tomache told me that, and it definitely works. Keep it short and it will flick the lure and it becomes dynamic really quick. So that's sinker. Now we're going to go up. Now let's have a look at aerodynamics. We talked about aerodynamic sinkers. Clip down rigs really do improve distance. Right, that's a typical clip down rig. Let me just put the bait on, and that's how it'd be. So go through the air streamlined. Look, just streamlining the rig, stopping the bait doing this as you cast will increase your distance by 1/3. As it hits the water, boom. Now the beauty is that the bait accelerates at the same speed as the sinker, so you're not going to leave it on the beach. Let's try this a bit better. There you go. Right, we're going to talk about line. Now, the rule is the thinnest line you can get away with is going to give you the greatest distance. But then you come up against a problem where abrasion, to beat abrasion, you need diameter. So it's great to have run-in lines, so 20 pound, and then you need a shock leader like a 60 pound. That gives you the diameter to take the abrasion of the sandbars, etc. It's normally about 30 foot. The rule is round the reel 5 times, up to the tip of the rod and back to the reel is the length you need. On a 12-foot rod, that's going to give you about 30 foot, something like that. Now, when you're talking line, these days we've got braid. I personally don't like using braid when I'm power casting on a bait casting reel. It tends to bite in. On a spinning reel, it's the best thing since sliced bread. The ability to use low diameter line on spinning reels has made them far more competitive. You can get a small reel with 200, 300 yards of line. That's a lot of line. And you can get the distance, where before when you were just using mono, it had to be really big reels and it'd cut your distance down. So that's the rule. Now, stick to that shock leader rule though. For every ounce of weight you're casting, you need 10 pound of line. So if you're casting 5 ounce, in minimum 50 pound. That should help you out. Now let's move up to the rod. Okay, we're going to talk about rods, how they load. Typical long casting rod is going to be like 12 foot. It's a spiking rod where we're going to throw a bait out and put it in a spike. That's the normal. Let's talk about that. The rule is the longer the rod and the faster the tip, the further it is away from the center of your chest, and that's how you get what's called tip speed. That's what's critical to casting. Now, if you've got a soft rod that's collapsing all the way through, slow action, the rod that started off being 12 foot ends up 6 foot by the time you go to do the cast. So a faster rod, keeping the sinker away like this one. This is a really fast tip. Put your hand out, look in the camera. So you can see how fast that tip is. So that's a really fast rod. So although this rod is 15 foot, I've still lost about 2 foot in length. Now the rule is you can go too long. So you have to pick a rod that you can physically handle it. I mean, a really small person, say like 5'2", weighing like 125 pounds, can't use the same sort of rod a 6 foot guy weighing 230 pounds can use, because he can't load it up and he can't get the speed that's required. Another thing is when we cast, we pull. We do push a little, but the energy comes from the pull. And if you watch any long casting tournament where there's a guy winning, he'll always have a really strong and powerful finish. So that's another point. Let's just quickly talk about reels. Now, since braids come in, spinning reels have become far more competitive, especially with the use of the cannon, so we can lock the braid down. On the spinning reel, the longer this section here is, the line comes off quicker and neater, gives you extra distance, but you've got to be careful because on some of them long casting shafts with the spool out, there's an awful load of tension on that center pin, so look for a real good thick pin. Here's the bait casting style reels. The smaller ones will always outcast the longer ones, so you need to be realistic with yourself, what you're targeting, where you're targeting, because the smaller the reel will definitely get you more distance. All right, so again, be very focused on what you're targeting to get the ultimate distance to smaller. What happens is, when you let go of that sinker, once you do the cast, there's X amount of energy to get that spool turning, which is now full of line. So the smaller spool is a lot lighter. Not only does it get going quicker, it reduces the amount of kinetic energy stored in the reel because it's lighter, which means it's easier to manage, less braking. So there you go. Between the two, if you can't practice or haven't got time, stick with spinning. If you've got the time to put a bit of time in on the beach or on the field, go with the bait casters. They're nice.